Ah, yes, sorry. E minor, right? Three, four. La 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 Yedid nefesh avrachaman meshochadecha el retzonecha yarutz avdecha kemo
Shabbat Shalom. So good to see you. Such a beautiful crowd really here. Welcome to those who are joining virtually. So we have arrived at Parashat Tetzaveh, and this is the Torah portion where we hear about all the fancy clothes that the priest had, the headdress and the tunic and the breastplate. And then there's this really interesting part of the clothing of the priest, something called the Urim and the Tumim. It's like, what is that? The analogy I make is, sorry, it's like a magic 8 ball maybe. And there's a lot of debate among our commentators. What was this thing that would hang down? Some say it was like parchment hanging in front of the breastplate with God's name on it. And how it would work, it was like an oracle of sorts. The priest would stand in front of the ark, and someone who had like communal weight, a commander or a king, whatever, would stand behind the priest and would ask a question. It had to be like a yes or no question. And the priest would meditate on the question, and this Urim and Turim would light up to indicate yes or no. And actually, a little piece of interesting trivia, if you look at the insignia of Yale, look, there are Hebrew words inside that say Urim and Tumim. Interesting. So we come to this Shabbat with questions in our hearts, hopefully some gratitude and joy, but also some questions. Maybe not ones that have a yes or a no answer, but questions that we're holding. And perhaps we don't have that magical oracle that the priest once had. But my prayer for myself and for all of us is that you can offer up a question tonight, a question that's deep in your heart, and listen for the answer. Maybe it will come from an unexpected place. We also hear about the beautiful lights that would be raised up by the priest, a ner tamid, a light for always. And so we read about that this week. And so with that image in mind, it's my joy to call up the Pachtars, who are going to kindle the Sabbath lights. Ina in celebration of her birthday that happened this week, and Mark in a few weeks, yours is coming. Thinking about the glorious light that is your daughter, watching her soar and grow has been such a joy. And we are on page 2.
Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Wishing you years of health and joy and lots of light.
Page 12, Psalm 95. Lechu neranena, lai 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 lai, la Adonai, lai 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 lai, Nahariya, lai 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 lai, let's let us sing out to God, the maker of all, sure and strong. Let all of creation from mountain to sea hear our song. Lechu neranena, lai 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 lai, na Adonai, lai 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 lai, Nahariya, lai 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 lai, Letzor Yishenu, God's light, we rejoice. So now let us listen with all of our hearts to hear God's voice. Lechu neranena, lai, 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 Adonai, lai, 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 Nahariah, lai, 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 Letzor Yisheinu, lai, 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 lai. Top of page 13. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz, shiru l'Adonai barechu shemo, basru miyom liyom yeshuato, sabru v'goyim kevodo, bechol ha'amim niflotav, ki gadol Adonai umkulal meyor, norahu al kol Elohim, ki kol Elohei ha'amim elilim, va'Adonai shamayim asa, od v'hadar lefanav, oz v'tiferet b'mikdasho. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, umlo. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, umlo. Ya'alo sare v'chol asher bo, az yiranenu kol hatzeyar, lifnei Adonai kiva, kiva lishbot haaretz, yishbot tevel betzedek, v'yemim b'emunato. Adonai malach tegel haaretz, yismechu im rabim, anam b'chazil v'tzedek meshbar. Page 14. Ohavei Adonai esinora, shomer nevashor chazidah, miad reshayim yahatzilem. Or zarua latzadik, o Yisrael simcha. Or zarua latzadik, o Yisrael simcha. Simcha tzadikim b'Adonai, b'Adonai, v'hodu lezecher kodosho, lezecher kodosho. Or zarua latzadik, o Yisrael simcha.
Page 15.
Mizmor shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, ki niflaot asa, Hoshia lo צדקתו, זכר חסדו ואמונתו לבית ישראל. ראו כל אפסי הארץ את ישועת אלוהינו. ילאי ללי 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 ילאי ללי פיצחו ורננו וזמררו. Raise a shout to Adonai. All the earth break into joyous songs of praise. Zamru l'Adonai bechino.
Page 16.
Bechino. וכל זמרה זמרו לאדוני בכינו וכל זמרה זמרו לאדוני בכינו בכינור וכל זמרה זמרו לאדוני בכינור וכל זמרה. בחצוצרות וקול שופר הריעו לפני המלך אדוני. ירם הים ומלוא תבל ויושביו נהרות ימך וכף יחר הרים ירננו לפני אדוני קיבה לשפוט הארץ ישפוט תבל בצדק וימים במישרים. יללי בהדרת קודש, כל אדוני עליי. רזי הלבנון וירקידי כמו עגל לבנון וסיריון. Page 19. Last paragraph at the bottom of the page. Adonai Oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Once more. Adonai Oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Li-li-lai, lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai.
So as we bridge to Lecha Dodi, thinking that with all my time trying to meditate and be mindful, I still feel like I'm terrible at it. Such a process, right? One of the ideas that you can use is you're sitting there trying to be zenned out and a worry comes up. You're supposed to honor it and put it down. And then another worry comes. Okay, hi, I see you there. Put it down. So as we go through these verses of Lecha Dodi, we're bridging to the last one when we're going to welcome in the purity and sweetness and renewal of Shabbat. And maybe I invite you, with every verse that we do leading up, take one little worry you have from this week and take it, give it a little kiss, and put it down. So that at least for these beautiful 25 hours, this island in time, this sweet, sweet, sacred Shabbat, we can become a little less burdened, a little more with eyes wide open, breathe a little deeper. Lecha Dodi, a meditation in putting a few things down. 20.
La 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 la. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Yishemianu el hamyuchad, Adonai echad u'shmo echad, L'shem u'tiferet v'litila. Lecha Dodi likra kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likra kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki hi mekora beracha, Merosh mikedem nesucha, Sof mahaseh b'machshavat chila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 4. Hidnari me'afar kumi, Livshi bigdei tifartechami, Al yad ben Yishai beit halachmi, Karva al nafshi ge'ala. Lecha Dodi likra kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likra kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 5. התעורנה, התעוררי, התעוררי, יהי בעורך, קומי אורי, 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 שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני, עלייך נגלה, לך דודי, נקרא כלה, בני שבת, לקבלה, לך דודי, לקרא כלה, בני שבת, לקבלה. בואי ושלום התרפלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני המסגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי, לקרא כלה, בני שבת, נקבלה, לך דודי, לקרא כלה, בני שבת, נקבלה.
"22.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות, עלי עשור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון וכינור. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. צדיק אתה אמר יפרח, כארז בלבנון ישגה, שתולים בבית אדוני, בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו, עוד ינובון בשיבה, דשנים ורעננים יהיו להגיד כי אשר אדוני צורי ולא עוולתה בו.
Join with me on the bottom of 22. The righteous bloom like a date palm. They thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in the court of our God. In old age, they still produce fruit. They are full of sap and freshness, attesting that Adonai is upright, my rock in whom there is no one. Speaking of righteous souls and Shalom Aleichem, we're about to speak about those angels. Just a reminder, in case you didn't catch the email, we're collecting toiletries. not only do our local families need food, but not everyone has toothpaste or shampoo or any of the things. So check out the email. There's a bin in the entryway. Let's be those angels as we always strive to be at Temple Beth-El. 24.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem Leshalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni Leshalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seitechem Leshalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu is on 28. We rise in body or in spirit.
Lai, 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 Lai la lai lai la lai. Lai 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 la lai. Lai la la lai 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 lai. Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam vaed. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam vaed. Baruch Adonai melech haolam asher be'oro rabbeinu. Let's read together. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night, and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzevaot is your name. Umavir yom umevi laila, umavdil ben yom umvein laila. Adonai Tzevaot shemo, Elachai v'kayam, tamid himloch aleinu leolam vaed. Baruch ata Adonai, Amahari v'haravi. Ahavat
32.
olam Beit Yisrael amchavta Torah u'mitzvot chukim u'mishpatim otanu limadeta Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shochbeinu u'v'komeinu נשיח בחוקיך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ויורך ימינו, ובהם נגה יומם ולילה, יומם ולילה, ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד.
Be seated. 36.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם, אמת ומנחזו בקיים עלינו.
Milchamocha, our song of freedom, begins on page 40.
מלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל, לכנו שירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם. לי 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 מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא, נורא תהילות עושה פלא. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים, זה אלי אנו ויאמרו, זה אלי אנו ויאמרו. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגואלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני קהל ישראל.
42.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom Ve'amidenu shomreinu lechayim Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom Ve'amidenu shomreinu lechayim Ufros aleinu Sukat shlomecha Ufros aleinu Sukat shlomecha. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and raise us up, our guardian, to life renewed. Join me. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and peace evermore. Baruch atah Adonai, aporei sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Ve'a Yerushalayim ve'a kol amo. Ve'a Yerushalayim shalom. Ve'a Yerushalayim ve'a kol amo. Ve'a Yerushalayim shalom. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Israel.
The Shamru is on 44.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל עוד היא לעולם, עוד היא לעולם, עוד היא לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. שמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש אהבת, וינפש. שמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. I would have let you go anytime you wanted. I was waiting. That was great, though. Very impressive.
The Amidah on 46. Rise in body or spirit.
Adonai, Savatai tiftach ufi hagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibur ve'Yonora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei Hakol, Ve'zocher Chasdei Avot ve'imahot, U'mevii geula livnei bneihem lema'an shemo b'yahava. Melech ozer u'moshia u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol ata rav lehoshia, Mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem. Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofech holim, U'matir asurim, U'mekayem emunato lishenei afar. Michamocha bal gevurot u'midom elach, melech memit u'mechayeh u'matzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman ata lehachayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, mechayei hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimecha kadosh, u'kedoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
Taking a few moments for our own private prayers, standing or seated, the meditations on the page or the reflections in your heart. We'll meet up again on page 60 in a few moments.
The evening prayer for peace is on page 60. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם. ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום.
Coming now to our prayer for healing. If there are any names that you want to utter aloud as I scan the room or to put into the chat virtually, please do so at this moment.
Randy Buslick.
253.
מי שברך אבותינו מקור הברכה לאמותינו. May the source of strength who blessed the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
And now Mayor, joining us from the Holy City.
Shabbat Shalom, Temple Beth-El. Coming to you from Jerusalem and looking forward to being back home with everyone in a couple weeks. I want to begin tonight thinking with you about a prayer called the Ashrei. Ashrei, Yoshvei Veitecha. Happy is the one who. It's about happiness. And many Jews say this prayer 3 times a day. Our morning minyan folks, I think, are familiar with it quite a bit. The opening line, you may sound familiar to, Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha, Od Yalu Chasela. It begins with an aleph, and this prayer is organized as an acrostic because each verse begins with the next letter of the aleph bet. And I want to teach you something I very recently learned about one verse, the lamed verse of this prayer. The lamed verse is right after the kaf and right before the mem. And the verse goes, I'm going to share a screen for a moment. The verse goes, here you can see the verse is Aleph through Kaf, and then Lamed, and then Mem, Kaf, Lamed, Mem. And it goes, Lehodia livnei ha'adam gevurotav, uchvod adar malchuto, or in English, Lehodia livnei adam gevurotav, uchvod adar malchuto. This verse, as I said, is the Lamed verse, El, Lamed, and there are a whole bunch of words that are connected to Lehodia. Leda'at, which means to know, intimate knowings. Adam and Eve, they did that. That was their knowing. Da is like a command, you shall know. De'ot are opinions. Mada is science. Meda is information. All these different ways of using this root of da. So the infinitive lehodia means to inform. It means to give knowledge, to share a deep kind of knowing, to illuminate an insight, to intentionally pass forward, pass down a kind of learning. It's a very strong active verb. And that's the first word of our Lamed verse. But there's a question. Lehodia, to pass down learning, but to whom? And so it says lehodia, and then it answers the question. Livnei Adam, to the children. To give knowledge over to young people, to human beings born to moms and dads. That's all of us. And then the last word, lehodia livnei Adam gevurotav. And this is the key word, gevurotav. And actually the suffix at the end of this word, we're going to get to. It's actually two words, gevura and shalo. Gevurato means his or her gevura. It's related to the word Gavriel, which means greatness and strength and even a kind of heroism. So the greatness, lehodia, to announce, to inform about the greatness that's his or hers. The verse means to tell over, to talk about, make known his greatness, her hero power, his strength, her heroism. To be clear, the most provocative aspect, as I alluded to a moment ago, of these five words is the final suffix of that final word, tav, gvuro tav. In other words, his or her strength or power. It's a possessive, his or her. And I ask again, whose strength and power is this verse daily or 3 times a day, thrice daily? Who's telling us to celebrate? Of course, this Lamed verse, like virtually every other verse in Ashrei, is guiding us to speak freely, inform widely, publicize broadly God's greatness, God's power and gift. And whatever the qualities of greatness are in your mind, attribute them to God. But the last part of the question is the verse speaking about only God's greatness? Is the prayer exclusively only about God's strength and power? I learned a beautiful insight this week that the answer is no. It's not referring only to God's power and strength. So who else's? That's my first question. I'll come back to it shortly. I want to connect this prayer, this Lamed verse and Ashrei to our portion of the Exodus. Parsha Yitro, Mishpatim, Truma, Tetzaveh. 3 weeks ago, we read Parsha Yitro, chapter 19, and the Torah says, Esai etchem al kanfei nesharim. I will lift you, I carried you, like a mother carries her chicks on eagle's wings. That was 19. Chapter 20, we read, Anochi Adonai Elohecha, Hotzeiticha me'eretz Mitzrayim. I am Adonai, your God. I brought you, yourself, out of that horrible place we know as Egypt. And I'll add, God took you, us, out of Egypt. Like courageous parents, dads and moms, take our children out of dangerous, destructive, maybe even abusive places. Last week in Parsha Truma, in chapter 25, we read, Asuli mikdash v'shachanti beto cham. Make for me a sanctuary so I can dwell within cham, you. God's not asking to dwell within the building, but God is saying that the work of constructing a space will create a place in our hearts for God to dwell right inside of us. That was last week. And this week, Tetzaveh, chapter 29, is clearly hearkening back to last. After so many instructions about the tabernacle and the dress code of the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, we read nearly the same words as chapter 25. Asuli mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham was 25, and now 30. V'shachanti b'toch b'nei Yisrael. V'hayiti lehem l'Elohim. I will dwell shachanti, the exact same word, and also within you. B'toch b'nei Yisrael, within the children of Israel. It's not about the building. There's so much intensity, so much emotion, vulnerability, feeling in these words, in these verses. To Jewish and non-Jewish readers for thousands of years, the Exodus is filled with, defined by love. It's a deep desire for closeness. It's an intimacy of caring and a prayer for connection. So where did we get that idea that God actually is inside of us? I always thought it was some new age spirituality, right? Mayor, Santa Monica, the West Coast, Tibet. Is it really Jewish? But clearly it's so right in front of our faces. It's right here in our book of Exodus. The idea that God is within us. B'tocham, b'toch b'nei Yisrael. I took you out. Our soul, our conscience, our voice of love and hope and faith, that's God. It's right here in these Exodus passages. The Torah teaches this theology right out in the open. God is very much inside each of us. Every morning we say, Elohai neshama, Elohai neshama shenatata bi. This soul, this neshama that natata bi, you placed it inside of me every morning. I get to wake up with it. Every morning I get to wake up. I have my soul because you've placed it there, God. My first question was about the verse of Ashrei lehodia livnei adam gvurotav. Make known, enable the children to discover God's greatness, but also someone else's greatness. That question becomes richer and deeper as we consider or truly embrace God's explicit desire, God's passion for being with us. Shachanti b'tocham last week, and this week, Shachanti b'toch b'nei Israel. Build me a sanctuary and let me live within them, within us. Truma last week, Tetzaveh right now, our Parsha this week. And so we can ask the more practical, pragmatic question, how do we do this? How do we bring God not into our buildings, but into our bodies, to our very existence? So I want to tell you 3 short stories. The first is a short story by former Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sachs from his childhood. He writes, "It seemed to me very important to show gratitude to my beloved dad. But what could I possibly give him? Whatever I had, I'd received from my mother and him. It was a completely asymmetrical relationship." Hope you get the connection. He clearly was trying to help us understand it. Eventually, says Rabbi Sachs, in some shop, I found a plastic model of a silver trophy. Underneath, there was a plaque that read, "To the best father in the world." Today, all these years later, writes Rabbi Sachs, I cringe at the memory of that object. It was cheap, banal, almost comically absurd. What was unforgettable, though, was what my dad did after I gave it to him. I really can't remember what he said or whether he even smiled. But what I do remember is that he placed it on the bedside table where it remained, humble, trite, for all the years that I was living at home. He allowed me to give him something and then showed that the gift mattered to him. The gift mattered to him. In that act, he gave me dignity. He let me see that I could give even to someone who had given me all that I had. Those are the words of Rabbi Sachs. In Parshiot Truma and Tetzaveh, God asks us to give gifts and teaches us that the giving itself is what builds the emotional space for God. We call that space a sanctuary. The giving somehow beautifully places God's presence inside of us. And Rabbi Sachs is suggesting that the receiving by his father and this faith within us that God receives our gifts, gives us dignity. We Jews believe or understand that the goodness, the hope, the search and demand for meaning, the love that we can feel from each other and for each other, that's evidence of God inside of all of us, each of us, inside of me. It's just simple. It's beautiful, but so easy to forget, to ignore, to disregard, or even deny. So story number one is about coming close to each other, to God, intuiting that God can dwell within us through our giving. My next story, number two, explains why we often feel that that's impossible. Story number two reminds us of moments we simply cannot give. We take distance, we exit stage left, we disconnect. It's just too threatening to confront. We all know this experience from our own lives. Thanks to Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, I've come to understand it in a new and powerful way. It's the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. It's not the story of their sin. We know about their sin. Rather, it's the story after the story of the sin. Rabbi Y.Y. and many mental health professionals teach that all too often, the real story of our trauma, our distance and alienation is what comes after the sin, what comes after our mistake. The moment that scars us for life, the lifelong scar that doesn't go away, that very often comes from the story after the story. We know step one, Adam and Eve are told not to eat from the tree of knowledge and of good and evil by God, but they do. They could eat from any other tree in the garden, but not that one, but they choose, of course, to eat from that one tree that God prohibited from them. That part of the story we know. So here's the next part that maybe we don't know. I continue. Vayomer lo, God says to him, to Adam, Ayeka, where are you? Adam and Eve, do you know where you are? Who are you? Do you know who you are? Who are you becoming? Is what that one word Ayeka means. Who among us, I ask, doesn't know this voice? Where are we? What is the truth of my moment? And then Adam says, Vayira. Vayomer, Adam says, Et kolech shamati bagan va'ira. I heard your voice in the garden, God, but va'ira, I was scared. Ki erim anochi. I felt naked. And finally, pause, stop the tape. What often happens at this moment in our lives, the moment we feel scared, we feel naked, vulnerable, embarrassed, ashamed, what do we do? What do I do? This is what we do. We do it. We've learned about it because we read about it from Adam. Va'echaveh. Va'ira va'echaveh. Adam says to God, I hid. I was scared, va'ira va'echaveh. And I hid. I was scared, embarrassed, humiliated, ashamed, so I ran away. I hid. I disconnected as much as I possibly could. This is so familiar to us, we miss it almost entirely in the Torah. What are they thinking, Adam and Eve? First of all, they can hide from God. They can trick the creator of everything. Of course they can't. Can we really hide from God? Can children really hide from their parents? Can we really hide from our spouses? Not well. But here's the second reason, the more important reason that I raise this. And this is really the new idea. Adam and Eve are so scared. Fear seeps into their very being, their bones, as it does to us. How many times do we make a mistake, feel embarrassed, afraid, ashamed? Once a year? Twice? Maybe once a month? Once a week, maybe? The story of Adam and Eve is our story. Every one of us knows this experience. And here's the million-dollar question. What do we do with our fear? When we feel tension, shame, embarrassment, regret, What do we do toward our spouse, our child, our parent, our friend, our colleague? When we feel we've let someone down, what do we do? Do we run away? Do we lie, pretend to ourselves? Do our self-lies push us to blame the other? Yes, yes, and yes, at times. We all do this. We do what Adam and Eve did. We hide. We hide from ourselves. We hide from that voice inside of morality and honesty, from that voice of conscience, all of which really wants to whisper back to us, come home, return, lashuv, teshuva, open ourselves, embrace your mistake. Because if we open our hearts, if we open ourselves to God's presence inside, we can hear these words of kindness and compassion. This founding story of Torah is our story. It's there to remind us all of who we are, what it means to be a human being. The Torah opens with this unbelievable insight. We're all Adam and Eve, and we're all invited to ask ourselves, what do we do after our mistakes and misdeeds? Do we hide, cut the connection? Do we move away? Are we ashamed and do I tell myself, I'm horrible, I can't face my loved one, I don't deserve them, I won't risk the encounter, I'm too embarrassed, too undeserving? Let's remember our opening question about the verse, Lehodia livnei ha'adam gevurotav. To Lodia, to make it known wide and far. Gevurotav, God's greatness to the world, to the children. But whose greatness? God's? Anyone else? How do we welcome God, the Shechanti, to dwell within us? Remember, that's the opening challenge in Truma last week, and the closing challenge in Tetzaveh this week. And now our final, our third story. This story and so much of my message tonight is from my learning from Rabbi Jacobson. It's a story, this third one, of a young man who was expelled from 8 schools by the time he was 14. His father would punish him double than any teacher or any head of a school. And at 14, the things were so bad that the father sent this boy to Israel alone. An adult who was responsible for the boy, when he arrived, took him to a shul called the Slonomer Shul near Bnei Barak. And as services ended, there was an 88-year-old man. We come to learn his name was Osher. And Rabbi Osher said to the boy, "Why are you here, son?" He answered, "I've been expelled 8 times from different schools, and my dad sent me to Israel." After a few minutes, the old man said to the boy, "Remember we sang this prayer, Ashrei, about 40 minutes ago. There's a verse, Lehodia livnei adam gevurotav uchvod adar malchuto. Literally, says the old man, this is about God's strength and loyalty. But a great teacher of mine," he said, "told me that it's not just about God's greatness. God wants each of us to teach every person we meet his or her own strength, beauty, glory. We speak of God's greatness," said Reb Osher to the boy, "not because God needs our compliments. God created you and wants to remind you every day that the world is incomplete without you, without your contribution. It's a mitzvah," Reb Osher said to the boy, "to let every person you meet to think about his or her greatness, his or her infinite dignity, his or her unique gift. Son, whatever happens, never forget your gevura." The boy left. He left the shul. Months, a year and a half passed. He got kicked out of 2 more schools. Felt that he had nowhere to turn. He was so lost. He felt like he just couldn't continue, couldn't go on anymore. The pain was too intense. So he went to a roof in Jerusalem that he knew and thought to himself, it's time to take myself out of this agony. Life is too painful. I can't do it. And suddenly he had a flashback. to that 88-year-old man, Reb Osher. Suddenly he thought about Reb Osher's teaching about the Ashrei, about the Lamed. Tell every person about his or her Gevurotav, his gift, his unique quality, the godly beauty that only he possesses. So the boy said to himself, maybe before I jump, I should come to know my great gift, my unique quality. After that, then I'll make a decision about whether to jump. And now, years later, this young man is married, a couple children, a family. If only Reb Osher knew what his words meant. Rabbi YY concludes, and I do as well, with this. Don't be stingy with your words. Don't be stingy with your gestures, with your embraces, with your hugs, with the love you share. Be generous. Let every person you meet know about their strength, their beauty, their amazing gifts. Shabbat Shalom.
Aleinu is on page 282, rising in spirit or in body.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל עמונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
You be seated. As we come to Kaddish, if you hear the name of someone that you are here to remember, please rise when you hear the name and remain standing. And of course, feel free to add any names virtually. This week marks the passing of Tova Gershon, Ruth Capel, Francine Stock, Stephen Seltzer, and Joan Farrell. And in the past 30 days, Florence Dykman, Judy Greenblatt, Rosalind Haber, Robert Nauer, Rita Perman, and Norman Sutton. And the Yordzites this week for Ruth Barshop, Mary Ganser, Deborah Samuel Greenberg, Paula Grunstein, Saul Hirsch, Carl Clear, Clara Nissenfeld, Alan Pinsky, Ann Sims, Paul Sherman, Brian Smith, Jacob Stein, Sarah Pock, and Bertha Taffler. And any other names omitted or mispronounced? If it's your custom to rise for Kaddish, please do so. We're on 294. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
אמן.
בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי. בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. בעגלה ובזמן קריב יאמרו אמן. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevarach Le'elam Olamei Almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemed kudsha
Brichu.
La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechemata da'amiran b'alma v'yimru Amen.
Amen.
Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael yimru.
Amen.
Amen. May the one who creates peace, harmony, and healing on high bring that to all of us. Ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, to all humanity. We say one last time, Amen.
Amen.
You may be seated. A few announcements. Torah study tomorrow morning online only, 9 a.m. for conversation, 9:15 for study, followed by Shabbat morning minyan service. We still have one more soulful parenting group this Sunday. Feel free to join. We're talking about the grand-parental relationship. It's a virtual class. Let me know if you want to join for that last one. Thursday, February 10th, occasional midday music and meditation with Cantor Adam.
That was yesterday.
Oh,
It was great.
okay. All right. Just reading the notes.
Yeah. Next one is March 1st.
Okay. Good point. We're already past that date. Brotherhood, February 17th, Brotherhood monthly meeting. Wednesday, February 23rd, we are serving up volunteers giving back during President's Day week. That's 4:30 and 6 p.m. at the Roslyn Harbor, maybe 4:30 to 6 p.m. at the Roslyn Harbor residence. So let us know if you're interested in doing that. Rabbi Mayer's Adult Ed, February 24th. I think it's going to be a powerful one on institutions of democracy. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I'll do February 27th. It's kind of interesting if you're free in the middle of the day. Temple Israel in Memphis, where I once served, is doing a round table with Rabbi Prizan, the first female ordained rabbi in the Reform movement, at 1 p.m. And it'll be with me and a number of other female rabbis. Okay.
Rabbis in Memphis. Rabbis in Memphis.
And let's see. Our next, if you have not yet read Tzippi Moss's book, Angels in Tahina, we have a lot of copies in the office, and our next Sisterhood Rosh Chodesh will be on March 6th, and would love to have you join us for that.
And if you enjoyed the Road to Fez conversation but didn't have a chance to pick up the book, or if you read a digital copy and want a physical book, we still have a few copies left in the office as well.
Okay. Awesome. And since the obvious February 10th date had passed, is there another Om coming up?
March 1st.
Okay, awesome, great. All righty, and so for Kiddush and Motzi in honor of her daughter's birthday, she will soon have a 13-year-old and soon have a bat mitzvah, calling up Dana Savetsky in honor of Tori, who made the basketball team and who's so much fun to work on her Dvar Torah with her. So, and I think the challah does have to be debagged. We're on page 5.
There we go. Page 5.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafel.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav ve'atzavanu v'shavat kadsho b'ahava u'ratzon hinchilanu zikaron le'maaseh bereishit. Yom Tehillah Lemikrai Kodesh Zecher Letziat Mitzrayim Kivanu B'charta Ve'otanu Kidashta Mikol Ha'amim Ve'shabbat Kodeshecha Ve'ahava u'v'ratzon Inchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen.
Shabbat Shabag.
Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen.
A mother of three, your last bat mitzvah coming up.
Let's conclude on page 330, in the middle of the page. Ki eshmera Shabbat. Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni. Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni. Oti leyomei ad beino veni. Oti leyomei ad beino veni. Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni. Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni. Oti leyomei ad beino veni. Oti leyomei ad beino veni. Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni. Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni. Oti leyomei ad beino veni. Oti leyomei ad beino veni. Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
believe so. I believe.